What's up, everyone? Today's conversation is with Halleemah Nash, founder of Rosecrans Ventures. I get a chance to talk to her about her unique perspective of Gen Z and what the next generation of Black and Brown thinkers, students, activists are passionate about. Halleemah Nash, thank you for joining me today. I know your schedule is very busy, so I appreciate the time.
Happy for the invitation. I appreciate you, Harrison.
I wanted to get started talking a little bit about your roots. What core values do you think you gained growing up in Compton? And what do you think you may have gained there that you wouldn't have been able to gain somewhere else?
Well, I think, Compton is this cauldron for hustle, entrepreneur activity, and like innovation and even creativity. I'll add that. And so I think that it's a place where I learned how to do a lot with a little. It's a place where I learned the power of relationships at every level. There was a dude named Mr. Charles off Elm Street in Compton who would let people borrow bicycles. Old dude, right? So I learned very early on, like this guy is making sure that if I got a long way to walk, like I can have a bicycle to get me to my destination. So I gave him a Christmas card every year. And that was like middle school. And he appreciated it so much. And he always gave me a flossy bike. Like Mr. Charles, it was never like a dusty BMX. It was like always something dope. I had teachers that were very invested in my success and could see that I was on a great trajectory even then. And so just the idea of being in touch with my teachers, like developing relationships with my teachers. And, you look up and years later, that sort of relationship development in that fantastic community of creators, led to a decade or so later, I ended up at the Chicago Bulls where Tyson Chandler was also playing. And we had cultivated great relationship. Mayor Asia Brown, who is from the town and, grew to become the mayor of the city, ensuring that those relationships and we stay interconnected in that way was something that I didn't necessarily learn in a networking class. I learned it just coming up in the town and making sure that you stay connected and also support people. So that's something that I've carried with me my entire career, my entire life. Those are, those Compton lessons that I share with my students.
I think every single person I've ever met from Compton reps the town.
Oh man,
like no one else. Like no one else. What makes you proud to be from Compton?
Oh my God, I just, Compton is this. I think it makes us prouder because of how Compton is marketed, right? Like people think Compton is just this like hood, rough and rugged NWA straight out of Compton place. Yes, that is true. But it's also a place where there's a tremendous amount of love. Like people that doesn't get as much pub. Like, yeah, people know that, drive-by shootings could be commonplace back in the day. The crack epidemic in 1982 made the environment where the poverty, there were so many people living below the poverty line and there was so much crime and, graduation rates at high school were low. All of those things were true, but there is a reason why in that environment, people like Kendrick Lamar could grow and become who he became. People like Venus and Serena could grow and become who they became. Violet Palmer, the first African-American female NBA referee, also from Compton. All of these people share sort of that same thread where it's like, man, but we have people that loved us. Whether it was people from the set that made sure that you were safe, or whether it was people that were working in after-school programs, or whether it was just people that lived in the same project as you. There is an overwhelming amount of love that exists like in our environment in Compton. And that stays with us, which is one of the reasons why we rep it so hard.
I also got to shout out my guy, DeMar DeRozan, too, from
Compton. Compton High School.
You getting a shout out to everybody else. I had to make sure my man got one in there, too.
Yeah, DeMar DeRozan, Kenny Bruner, you might know him, Cedric Ceballos. These are all people that, come out of the town. Tayshaun Prince went to Dominguez High School at the same time that Tyson Chandler was there. Yeah, a lot of talent coming out of the mud. You know what I mean?
Facts. Looking a little bit forward, 2020 was a painful year
for a host of different reasons. And most workplaces found themselves operating, with a new normal. But after the murder of George Floyd, we saw a lot of companies for the first time ever become vocal about systematic racism in this country and saying the words Black Lives Matter. Do you think there's value in normalizing the words Black Lives Matter?
I think there is value in normalizing the words when the words are followed by actions. Mm-hmm. So the words just alone in and of themselves, words are powerful, yes. But, I always say, if we see Black Lives Matter on your website or on your jerseys or on your campaign, do Black Lives matter in your hiring processes? Do Black Lives matter in the culture of your organizations? Do Black Lives matter when you make decisions on salary? Do Black Lives matter when you're hiring your intern class? That's when the words actually have creative ability. And I think that when the words and the actions are tied together, then we start seeing, an attack on this sort of systemic thing that has been a part of the fabric of our country. And, George Floyd, it just is such a sadness and such a heartbreaking thing that someone had to lose their life in such a heinous way for Black lives to matter to brands, for Black lives to matter, for it to be commonplace for folks to say it. Because prior to George Floyd, it was something controversial. To say Black Lives Matter meant something in certain audiences. But now those same audiences are carrying that banner. And my request and my push in terms of accountability for those people is make sure that that sort of blackout box that's on your Instagram and that Black Lives Matter banner that you sort of see and all of the strategies and the thought that you put into the profits that you make out of Black and brown people actually goes into your talent strategies, into your social equity strategies, into you actually making this idea of Black Lives Mattering being real.
Mm-hmm. After the protests, there was a lot of universities, front offices, companies having to face with issues of diversity. People wanting to see diversity and really pushing for that change. What are the tangible benefits to diversity in the workplace?
So, McKinsey did this really great study that came out years ago that, gave hard data that companies that are more diverse actually do better. It contributes to your bottom line. There is something valuable about having multiple voices at the table, because what brands will also tell you is that there were a lot of brands that got into a whole lot of trouble in the last couple of years because they didn't have enough voices at the table to say, you know what, that sweatshirt is culturally insensitive. This initiative, that commercial is not going to land well on my block. So, and of course we keep going back to marketing, but, when that's across industries, whether we're talking about STEM-based careers or we're talking about advertising and marketing, or if we're even talking about education and leadership from a shared experience, diversity is sort of a rich way to be innovative in your company because you include all of the voices that represents the various faces of your customer base. So whether you are, a person that's in sneaker branding and that your billboards all have people that look like me, but the people on your board do not, you will find yourself in a place where you can make culturally incompetent decisions. You can make dangerous decisions. You can make decisions that actually do harm. And so diversity becomes your opportunity to do better work, do more equitable work. And then even if you just kind of put equity right here, just know that there is a ridiculous amount of brilliance in Black and brown communities, in communities where there are women and girls, in communities where there are LGBTQ teens and young adults, in communities where people have different religious preferences. That tapestry is going to deliver for you a higher level of innovation than just sort of these homogenous tables that we've become used to.
Now, would you say that there's a difference between inclusion and diversity? And if so, what does inclusion look like in real time?
Yeah, I actually saw this, really dope post the other day that I think, communicated it really interestingly. We've all heard this, idea that like diversity is everyone being invited to the dance, and like inclusion is, allowing me to contribute to the playlist. So, the post said diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, belonging is an outcome. So there is a difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because, before, diversity became this sort of sexy catchphrase that a lot of people were using. And then folks were like, well, diversity is not enough. You're opening the doors for different people to enter. But, there's certain people that are only at the entry level. There's not equity in terms of how we exist. So let's talk about diversity, equity, and then also inclusion. And I think inclusion is that thing that creates this idea of belonging. So I actually want to stay there, so that I'm invited to the dance. Yes, but I don't want to come to the dance and be uncomfortable. I don't want to come to the dance and feel like I'm watching everybody, cut a rug and I'm standing on the wall, because this doesn't feel like a space for me. So I think that sort of molding all of those conversations together creates this sense of belonging. So I'm helping to curate the playlist. I can also be the DJ at the party. Right. That's sort of what this experience looks like.
How do you think PWIs can make themselves more inclusive?
Oh, such a good question. I think that there are, the way that companies have business resource groups, employee resource groups, PWIs have Black student alliances and Latinx engagement sort of forces, but often those organizations are not engaged in the larger opportunities that exist in the university. Most of the time, there's sort of a siloed experience that happens with those. And I could speak to that because I went to Howard University for undergrad and HBCU. I went to Duke, caveat, I'm a UNC Tar Heel fan, so I'll just go ahead and throw that in there. I went to Duke for graduate school, where I kind of was a student to what that actually looks like, to try to create community based on, racial context and sort of cultural similarity. But I would sort of see that recruiters would come to certain universities, but those Black student alliances weren't engaged. Right. Like initiatives will come to those universities and engage some fraternities and sororities, and then other ones will be left out. So I think PWIs have the ability from a leadership level to consider what is the academic experience of your students of color if they exist in the minority, and how do you ensure that they are empowered with opportunity in an equitable way? Because when you go on a college campus, there's like levels to this, right? I have a student who I'm coaching, and she made mention that, her roommate, her freshman year, went to like Italy with her family on this trip, for spring break. And she had 2 jobs. And so she's like, there's no spring break for me. Like, I'm getting extra hours so I can pay for my scholarship. And so if you have those 2 existences that are in the same space, in the same dorm, how do you ensure that both of them feel a sense of belonging? Because there's one that already has that made, right? They feel welcome and invited to this space. And the other has to kind of fight their way into the table and even build one for themselves so that they can feel like they are a part of this larger experience. And that can happen in student activities. That can happen with expanding and increasing the budgets that are available for student-based organizations that are a part of cultural identity. And I also think, we're talking about, you asked me the question about Black Lives Matter. What is so different about the work that I'm passionate about at Rosecrans Ventures is I'm not just affirming your identity by saying that you matter. I'm saying that you matter with an opportunity. So I'm saying your locks are loved in this space. Your dark skin is loved in this space. Your queer identity is loved in this space. And it's so loved in this space that I'm going to give you a paid internship with those contexts, right? So I think that PWIs have an opportunity to say the same thing. Like, how do we provide access to people to feel like there's one culture at this university and everybody is invited?
That's deep. I feel like every generation, becomes more diverse and more inclusive. But, Gen Z is definitely taking, inclusion to another level. My first question is, would you agree with that? And secondly, how do you see that in your work?
Let me tell you something. I stand for Gen Z. Like, yes, I would absolutely agree. Because if you think about it, Generation Z is pushing systems to think differently about everything. Like, we want you to think differently about where protest goes. We want you to think differently about climate change. We want you to think differently about employment and workspaces and flexibility. We want you to think differently about inclusion and culture. And that's something that people in the civil rights movement fought for, and the Generation X and Generation Y that came after the baby boomers continued to fight for in different spaces. But what's different about Generation Z with social media and the fact that they are naturally entrepreneurial and the fact that they are so diverse, Generation Z is 61, 62 million strong, with more than half of them, just a touch over half, identifying as people of color. So it's the most diverse generation we've ever seen. And so since that is the case, companies are going to have to think differently about their talent pipelines, about their diversity initiatives. And then even, large organizations like the NBA and the NFL and sort of these sports systems are also thinking differently, because Generation Z is like, there's a way that I want to feel about consuming this media or consuming this project. If I'm going to buy this product, I want to feel good about this brand. If I'm going to support this team, I want to feel good about the decisions that you make. And that is not necessarily a new thing, but Gen Z is taking people to task to say, look, we have to think differently about how we make sure that we are delivering a quality future for this next diverse, naturally entrepreneurial, naturally gravitating to technology generation.
Absolutely. I mean, it's incredible what they're able to achieve, and all the things that they're adding to society and building for society to make it better. But now that we've taken more of a macro look, I want to focus a little bit more on you. I want to hear about Rosecrans Ventures. Tell me, how the idea started. How's it going, and what is the ultimate vision or goal that you have?
Yeah. So I love all those questions. Rosecrans Ventures, it started a few years ago. I was doing work in workforce development for a few organizations. Interesting, Harrison, because my last maybe 4 jobs, I always created an internship. I'm like, I'm at the coordinator level, and, I'm working in sports, and there's not a lot of people that look like me that are interning in sports. I was working at the Chicago Bulls, and I'm like, how can I open the door for more people of color to gain experience in sports? Like, let's launch this internship effort, right? And that continued with every single job. And then a couple of years ago, I thought about populations that I was very passionate about serving, that represent my own story. And I was working with a lot of high achieving students, but I had a brother who did a 18-year sentence that had recently come home. And we talked a lot about his challenges in securing employment opportunities. So I was taking what I was delivering to these high performing students going to college to my brother. And then he started sharing it with his friends, and I got an additional connection to this fantastic Bay Area organization called the PICO Network, brother Michael McBride, and Live Free. And I had a couple opportunities to do professional development and workforce development for formerly incarcerated individuals. And I was like, man, this is cool. I want to do more of this. And then I started doing some general workforce work, and I realized that women and girls were having a hard time getting engineering internships and getting STEM internships. So I'm like, okay, how can I create programming to give them access to opportunity? And I looked at the numbers of Latinx and particularly undocumented students that were not getting the same access to these workforce experiences. And I'm like, man, what if I just kind of do consulting and help organizations to open doors of employment, particularly for internships for these populations? And I mean, Harrison, I was beast mode. Like, I was just killing it. And I'm like, I thought that this would be much harder. And I loved it so much. And in 2019, I was able to accomplish placing 26 Black and brown students from the South and West side of Chicago with CEOs in Chicago. So I had this idea where I was like, okay, what if we get you an internship, but your very first experience in the workplace is shadowing the highest person in the organization?
Yeah.
So as opposed to sort of the entry level, what we all did, like we worked at the Gap over the summer, we worked at McDonald's, or we, like Naila, who works with you, will say, when you work in sports, you're blowing up balloons and you putting together fan bags and like they're early and they're late. And what if your first internship is with the CEO of a Fortune 500 company? What if your first internship is with a founder who shares your cultural context? And it just boomed. And I realized that it was something that I could do. I was scared to leap and do the entrepreneurial thing because I'm like, I'm first gen and I'm completely independent. So, and single. So my thought was, I need to work. So this is going to be a side hustle. So I was working a full-time job and doing it on the side. And last year I made the decision to bet on myself. The same way that I'm asking companies to bet on these young people, I decided to bet on myself and make this my full-time work. And to that last question that you asked, where do I hope this goes? Yeah. Ultimately, I want the big tech firms to feel like their employment talent pipelines can include the most underrepresented populations. I want not just small startups, but across the board. I want, my young girl with burgundy hair who wants to be a neurosurgeon to be able to intern at a hospital with folks that are able to do that just because of nepotism, right? I want my brother to feel like, regardless of his criminal background or regardless of his past, that he could have a quality and lucrative workforce experience. And I want people to feel like they have those opportunities. And I want organizations and systems and companies to open up those doors because this represents the future of work.
I love that. I think that's so powerful and impactful, just because I think, just looking from an athlete perspective, you want to talk to somebody who's in the NBA or somebody who's in college or somebody who's playing varsity basketball in high school, whatever level you're at, you're always trying to find the best person to tap into and get knowledge from them. Because really, once you have that knowledge, you have the tools you need to go and, make whatever future you want. But getting that knowledge is one of the toughest things. So, I love everything about what you're doing. And, how can people support, Rosecrans Ventures?
Oh, great question. So it all starts with a hello. You can email us at hello@rosecransventures.com. The way that anyone watching can support, if you are at a company and you have internship opportunities and you are interested in a partner that can help you to diversify what that looks like, reach out to us. If you are underrepresented and you're having challenges in securing employment opportunities, pull up to Rosecrans, where we do professional development and we help to nurture where you are to help you get to where you're hoping to go. If you are a corporation, if you're a large brand and you're looking for a partner to help you map out ways that you can reimagine your workforce, pull up to Rosecrans. Follow us on social, Rosecrans Made. Check out our website, www.rosecransventures.com. That's my plug.
That's all the information that we'll definitely get that out there. My last question for you, because I know we're pushing up against time, is, in working with Gen Z and it now being 2021, what gives you hope?
Oh, their being gives me hope because, I'm gifted, I'll say, I have a tremendous privilege in doing this work at Rosecrans Ventures, because every single day I'm having conversations with young people like Taufik Rasaki, who says, I want to one day own an airline where I provide opportunities for refugees to be able to fly from where they are to where they want to go. What? I have a young lady who's interested in putting together an app that could have potentially saved Trayvon Martin's life around access and criminal justice reform. I'm listening to these ideas all the time. And I'm like, wow, our future is in amazing hands with this generation that I feel like they've embraced that we can do anything. We just need an open door. So I'm making it my work to open the door to match their potential.
Halleemah, you're doing the work. I learned a lot from this conversation. I appreciate all that you're doing, and I'll definitely Speaking for myself, I'll be supporting, your causes and definitely be tapped in there. Got to shout out HU since you're wearing a sweatshirt right there.
Hey, and this is a Gen Z entrepreneur that created this last night.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Halleemah, thank you for the time, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Hey guys, that was really good. Except question 2, there was a little bit of skip when you asked about, you're proud to be from Compton. Do you guys have time to go over that again, or I'm sure it'll be fine if we just run it the way it is? But there was a little kind of glitch there in the video.
What was the question?
What makes you proud to be from Compton?
Oh yeah.
Man, I specifically wanted to do it here at the gym because I knew the Wi-Fi would be better, and it still glitched. That's crazy.
Grace and flexibility.
Absolutely. All right. We'll do that real quick. Shout out to the Nash shout out in there too. I like that. Let's see here. Everyone I know from Compton always reps the town. What makes you so proud to be from Compton?
Oh, many, many reasons. But, Compton is this cauldron of entrepreneurial and creative and like innovative energy. And so for me, I got to Howard University and, we have this thing in the School of Business where you stand up and you say your name and your major and where you're from. And it wasn't nobody else from Compton. So you're going to hear this. Hi, I'm Halleemah Nash. I'm a marketing major from Compton, California. And that was the first time I'm like, okay, I grew up in Compton, so we are proud of it. But once you reach you're in a new space, we want everybody to know where we're from because we are, ambassadors for the narrative of what it means to come from the mud. Not the mud meaning it's just dirty, but like from the soil that is rich and includes love and opportunity and success and vice and all of the things that represent what we see in inner city neighborhoods. And I mean, for me, I that has never left me. I don't enter into any space and leave Compton outside. Compton comes with me. And when I say Compton comes with me, brilliance comes with me. The ability to do, a lot with a little comes with me. My whole entire community full of Black and brown faces and folks that are doing different things, whether you hustling on the corner or whether you teaching in a classroom, all of that is Compton. And I think that kind of diversity is like this beautiful soil that like makes us proud to be from it.
Everyone I've always met from Compton feels the exact same way and gives me that same answer. So I'm glad to see it's consistent. I'm glad to see you repping.